So my kids convinced me to play Roblox for the first time. So I downloaded it onto my PC here. After a little initiation of trying to get it on my computer, I finally ended up here in this room. I'm like, all right, what am I supposed to do here? So I'm like, oh, they're like, yeah, you can dress them up. You can be a girl or a boy. You can add different clothes. So I'm like, kind of looking at the outfits here. I was trying to find something that kind of had an Asian appearance, but I couldn't really find much selection on the basic level here. So I'm looking through the shirts and I'm thinking, okay, all right. I see a sweater, a tank top, a vest. I went back with a Hawaiian shirt because I was like, well, all right, that looks pretty casual. And now I'm trying to find some shorts, but I guess they don't offer much in the way of shorts. And I'm like, well, that's typically what I wear is shorts. I don't really wear pants or khakis or anything like that. So I tried to find something that looked kind of casual. I'm like, no, not this one. So I guess I just went with the blue jeans there. And then I tried to find some hair that looked kind of cool. I didn't realize you had to take off the old hair to put on the new hair. So I'm like, oh, okay. So you start from scratch here. I tried to find like a spiky black hair, but I didn't want to spend all day looking for an outfit. So I was like, all right, I'll just go with this messy black hair look. And then they're like, oh yeah, you can get a hat. So I was trying to find a hat that looked kind of cool, but didn't make me really look like, I was like, nah. Then I was like, oh, what about these horns? Yeah. And I was like, yeah. But then I was like, nah, all right, maybe I won't go with a hat because I didn't really like the looks of the hat. So I was like, all right, maybe that isn't going to work out too well. So I kind of looking a little bit more. I didn't see anything that really caught my eye. And I could probably accessorize a little bit more later, but right now I just kind of went back with the basic setup. And of course, all three of my kids are trying to tell me what to do at this point. They're like, you can do this and you can do that. And the other one's telling me, and I'm like, what the heck am I supposed to do here? And then my oldest son's like, oh, you can name your outfit. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to name it Master Chewel. Master Chewel's outfit. So I got the outfit saved under Master Chewel. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to go with this outfit. Couldn't figure out how to get back out of there. And then I'm like, how do I leave this room? And then I'm like, oh, I asked him, I go, well, I just want to start exploring. I don't want to spend all day looking at accessories. Wow, you look incredible. Well, thank you. I am Master Chewel, by the way. So right now you're standing in your house, not much going on in my house. And they're like, Wayne, you can decorate your house. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm like, what can I do here? So I'm sitting on my couch, which is pretty plain, as you can see. I didn't really have a lot of Robux. It looks like you only start out with 100. So I was like, didn't really want to do too much and go crazy on the money. I didn't see any accessories here that really impressed me. So I'm like, what else can I accessorize? And they're like, oh, well, you can change the wallpaper, the floor. So I'm like, what looks cool here? Oh, what says cool like a wallpaper full of swords, right? Right? I'm Master Chewel. Kind of goes together, right? A wallpaper of swords. Too bad it wasn't like katanas or Japanese swords or something, but all right, I'll go with that. Then they're like, oh, you can change the furniture and the floor. And I'm like, all right, maybe I'll change the floor because brown and blue kind of don't really match. I guess I'll go with this blue floor, even though it really isn't my first choice. But I'll definitely come back and do some more stuff with that later. Right now, I just really wanted to get the feel of exploring. So I'm walking outside my house, claiming all these things that they give to you on day one, I guess. They give you 13 Roblox and a cuddly little kitten, I guess. I don't know. So I'm like standing outside my house, trying to figure out how to move, look up, look around, trying to get used to the controls. I kind of guessed that A, W, and D was left, right, and forward. Spacebar was jump. And then I figured out pushing the arrow keys make me look in the direction. So they're convincing me to go over here to the pets. They're like, oh, go get a pet. I'm like, okay. So I go over here to this pet area and I see this little dog guy. He says, well, hello there, human. You look like the type of chop who would help a friend out. And I'm like, okay. And mind looking after this egg? Take good care of it and I'll hatch it into an outstanding pet. All right. I'm like, okay. So there they gave me this egg. I'm like, what am I supposed to do with that thing? He's like, no, 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 no. Don't hatch it. That costs Robux. I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm like, just pick it up. And I'm carrying around this unhatched egg. And I'm like, this is kind of awkward, but okay. So I'm walking around with this big egg. And they're telling me, well, it'll tell you when it needs things, like if it needs to be fed. I'm like, all right. So I'm walking around with this egg, and I'm like, well, what else can I do here in this this world here besides walking around with this giant egg? And then I come back out here trying to do a little exploring, and I see that there is another section out here, and I go, well, can I put this thing away somewhere? Can I do something with it? And they're like, no, you have to hold on to it. I'm like, what? So I come out here, and I see across the hall there's a section that says babies, and I'm like, oh, well, before I leave this building, I'm going to go check this thing out. So I come out here to the baby area, and they're like, oh, that's if you want to be a baby. And I'm like, that sounds like fun. So I go over here, and they're like, if you step in there, you'll become a baby. And I go, okay. So I'm like, oh, look at me. I'm a tiny little baby. I'm a tiny little baby, and like a baby. I go, where's my egg? They're like, oh, it's in your backpack. And I'm like, you have to get it out. I'm like, oh, there it is. How come I can't carry it anymore? Because you're a baby. Babies can't carry eggs. I'm like, oh, that's awkward. So how is this thing going to follow me? Is this going to follow me around? I don't want to lose my egg. Your egg will hatch by itself if you take good care of it. But then I got impatient, and I was like, should I do it? No, okay, I guess I won't. So I'm walking around. I'm like, okay, now I'm a little baby, and this egg is following me. I want to go outside the town. I just want to start looking around. Oh, can't go into the VIP room. They're like, no, that costs Robux. I'm like, okay, I don't want to spend a bunch of Robux right off because I want to save it for other things. So then I first come out into the town. I'm like, holy smokes, there's a lot of people out here. It's like a whole virtual world. I'm like, all right, what can I do? And so they go, click on this person and you can start a trade. So I see a trade, ride, and give item. And then immediately I'm like, oh, this is kind of cute. I can ride on these people. Your egg is hungry. Tap them to feed them. And I'm like, how do I feed them? And then you got to click on your egg, and then you can go feed. And I had a sandwich in my backpack, so I gave him the sandwich, I guess. Didn't know babies eat sandwiches, but okay. So I'm walking around. I'm like, what else can I do? And somebody else wanted to give me some kind of trade. I don't know. They gave me something. And then immediately I'm like, where am I? And then I realized this girl is carrying me around, this savage hamster. I'm like, hey, let me down. So I jumped out, and I'm like, all right. Looking around. And I see, I'm like, what's over on this other side of the bridge? I fell off the bridge, and I'm like riding on the back like I'm a little Yoda or something. Like we go into town, back into town, and I see this dude with the angel wings or the devil wings or whatever you want to call that, like the bird wings. I'm like, ooh, that guy's pretty cool looking. So I clicked onto him, and I'm like, okay, maybe he'll trade me something. And then he's probably looking at my items and seeing that I got nothing to trade, and he's probably like, no, dude, I'm not going to trade with you. You got nothing to trade. Like, well, you could give me some stuff. I'm just a little baby, right? So I see this other guy. I think his name was Andrew or something. And he's like walking around. He has is it a two-headed dog or three-headed dog? Might be a three-headed dog even. Like, that must be kind of a rare animal. So I see him walking around, and I jump on his back. And I'm like, yo, Andrew, man, give me a ride. It looks so funny because it's funny that they don't have a choice. Like, I can just jump on the back of these people. Like, no big deal, right? And he's talking to this other guy. I'm just sitting on his back, looking at all these different people walking by with their rare pets. And I'm like, oh, this is cool. And I'm like, and of course, my kids are in the background. And they're like, let's go do this. Let's go do this. Go do this. Like, so I asked them for a trade. And then they're like, oh, man, that'd be sweet if they gave you something. And then didn't ask for anything back. And I was like, yeah, okay, I'll take a trade. Maybe he'll give me some. And it said unbalanced. It means I'm guessing like he didn't like the trade. You know what I mean? Like I had nothing to trade, and I just wanted him to give me something. So I guess that didn't work out. And of course, people were coming by trying to be my friend and everything because they see this little mini Master Chul guy, and they're like, "Yo, I want to pick up this little baby." And it's like every 5 seconds someone's picking you up and carrying you around somewhere. And this Izzy Izarios or whatever wanted a request to trade. So I was like, all right, if she's going to give me something, I guess. So I pushed accept. And then I think she started popping in a bunch of weird stuff. But then she was waiting for me to trade something with her. And I was like, I don't have anything to trade for you. But it looks like the trade seems unbalanced. Remember, scamming and real world trading are two different things. So she didn't trade with me because she probably like, where's my stuff? So I'm walking around. At this point, my kids are like logging on. And they're like, come look at our houses. Come look at our stuff. And I'm like, all right, let's show me around. What am I supposed to do here? And I guess at the pet shop, I was like, oh, can I buy some more food? I don't have any more food because my egg wants some more food. And they're like, well, you can't buy it at the pet shop. So I was like, where can I buy food at this point? So I'm looking around and they're like, well, you can buy it at the shop there. So I go into this shop. Oh, no, I thought I was going into this shop. I guess I went across, that's right, I went across this bridge. So I'm going across this bridge looking for some food to feed my unhatched egg here. And they're like, no, don't go over there. And I start going, no, don't go over there. I'm like, all right, where am I supposed to go? And so they keep telling me to go across this bridge place. But then I went in here and I'm like, well, can I buy some food in here? And I guess it's some kind of ice cream shop. So I go up here. This Elsa lady selling some ice cream, but I'm like, hi, welcome to my new ice cream shop. The local penguins love to hang out here. And I'm like, well, how do I buy some ice cream from this place? And my kids are like, first you got to pick a cone. If you'd like a penguin of your very own, just feed them a golden goldfish. Also, look out for the golden penguin. He's very particular with what he eats. If you want some of the best ice cream in this port of town, just buy it from Archer. I mean, me. So I'm like looking around, trying to figure out how to get the ice cream. And I click on these scoops and they're like, no, you got to buy an ice cream cone first. You got to buy the cone. See, grab an ice cream cone first. I'm like, where's the cone? I don't get this. And they're like, oh. So I just kept clicking on these little hands. And I'm like, till I found one that said cone. It said scoop, scoop. Oh, buy ice cream. There we go. All right, so I clicked on that for $1. That's kind of a cheap ice cream, I guess. $1, that's not too bad. So I buy the ice cream. Then I add the scoop of ice cream. Then I'm like, what flavors do you have? Strawberry? What's this other flavor? And then I'm asking her. And it says, I'm thirsty. All right. Oh, and then now my son Phoenix is here with his pet, Phoenix 70787. Hey, welcome to my new ice cream shop. And then they're like, why'd you click on that? Now you're going to have to listen to that whole thing again. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm just trying to get some ice cream to feed my pet. Then she's going through the whole spiel about the golden goldfish again and all that jazz. And I'm like, oh, hurry up. Is there a way I can skip past this part? And then I'm like, okay. So finally she goes through this whole spiel again. I'm like jumping around. I'm like, okay. All right, what am I supposed to do here? Finally, I get the ice cream, and I'm like, just give me the ice cream. I want to get out of here. I got ice cream in hand. No idea what flavor this is, but I'm like, all right. So now I'm trying to feed it to my egg there, and he's kind of looking at it like, what the heck is this thing? Actually, I should come back and try to get one of those penguins. That looks kind of cool. According to my son, he goes, those are a pretty rare pet. So he's eating the ice cream, and then I'm trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do here. I'm like, they're saying like, click on these things so you can see if your pet is thirsty or sleepy. So they're like, follow these arrows and it will lead you to where you need to go. But it was kind of glitching out, so I couldn't see exactly where the arrows go. I was trying to figure out how to get to my house. So I'm like trying to find these arrows, look at the arrows. But as you can see, the arrows aren't really showing up good. They're like glitching under the ground. And I'm like, how am I going to find my house? Nope, that's not it. And I'm like, no, this isn't it. And they're like, oh, no, it's over here on the right. And so I started running over here and I go, no, that doesn't look like my house either. And then I kept going. And then it says I need a shower. I didn't notice that until later. And then I started stinking. And I'm like, Then I realized I needed a shower. This is my son's house. Phoenix is Peppa Pig's house. And I'm like, what the heck? He changed his name to Unspeakable. And he's got like a mansion or something. I'm like, dude, my 7-year-old's got a mansion. And I'm like living in this little slum house saying, I'm like, okay, I want to know where I can get a shower. And they're like trying to tell me to do this other trade. I go in this room and I go down and there's a giant pool in there. I'm like, what the heck? So I'm swimming around thinking that's going to help me not stink, right? So I'm swimming around in this pool, swimming. Oh, yeah, this is nice. And I go back upstairs. They're like, come out here. I'm like, can I put my egg in there? Do I need to go get some sleep? And they're like, well, don't go to sleep yet, but that's where you're going to go. But because you're a baby, you have to sleep in there. I'm like, what? But I put my egg in there, and then he was getting rest, I guess. So I left him in there. He's sleeping. Wandering around down here. I'm like, what the heck is all this stuff? And he's like, come up here. He wants to trade me some kind of pet, and he's carrying me. I think he wanted to give me something. And I was like, what am I doing up here? Looking around. I told him I wanted to get a shower because, man, I stink. And then he was like trying to give me a pet. And then I was like, okay. I didn't really want to be up there because I was trying to get the shower so I could get cleaned up. So we go back downstairs. I'm trying to follow these arrows, figure out where I'm supposed to go. I'm following him, and he's just kind of wandering around. I think at one point he was going to trade me something. And he ended up trading me this thing that was some rare pet. I guess I ended up with a dog. Maybe that was my pet that hatched. I couldn't remember where the dog came from. I was like, what happened to my egg? Or is that what hatched from the egg? And then I was going to go wander around. He's like, no, don't go leave yet. Because he wanted to show me more of his house. And then he's like, I think he wanted to trade something with me. Yeah, there you go. And then he was going to trade something, give me some pets or something. So I'm like, all right. I don't have anything to trade you, but if you want to give me something, that's cool. So he's like figuring out what he's going to give me, and he was laughing, and I'm guessing these are like all the leftover stuff he doesn't really want. I mean, he's giving me all these weird pets, and I'm guessing these must be like entry-level pets or something. And I'm like, okay, I don't care. I'll just give me whatever you want. So he's looking around his backpack, trying to figure out what he's going to give me, and he gave me this weird pet. I took it. I don't know what the heck it is. And then he gave me some money because I ended up with some more money. And then he wanted to give me more stuff, so I was like, okay. Then he gave me more weird pets. Looks like a cat, a rabbit or dog or fox or something. A lot of foxes or something. I don't know what the heck he's trying to give me. So I took that stuff. Oh, he tried to give me some weird car and a bird and a bee. And like he started trying to give me all this weird stuff. I was like, okay, I didn't know what to do with all that. And then my other son's like, don't give him all that. I'm like, okay, I just want a shower, man. I'm like stinking up over here. I'm like, can you tell me where the shower is? So at this point, he's still messing around with the trade stuff. And I'm like thinking, man, I just want to get a shower, dude. Can you show me where the shower is? And I go up into this room and I'm looking around. I'm like, oh, I think I was already in this room because that's where the egg was sleeping, right? So he gave me another pet. And I'm like, what can I do with all this? And then I'm like, fly? I can fly with this thing? And here comes Grace with her unhatched egg. And then we go down here. He's wandering around. We're all hanging out together now. I think we're only missing Sean somewhere. I'm like, I'm kind of enjoying swimming around in this big giant pool. That's pretty fun. And like we come up here, swimming around. Then I'm like stuck here. I'm like, how do I get out of this pool? Oh, okay, here I go. And then we go up these stairs, and I'm like, all right. Right now I'm just thinking about getting a shower because I'm really like stinking it up right now. So we go upstairs. He's like, oh, okay, go upstairs here, and you can get the shower. Oh, at this point he had traded me, and he gave me this penguin, which has become a real nuisance because now he wanted the penguin back, and I couldn't figure out how to give him the penguin back because it wouldn't let me give him the penguin back. And I remember at this point, he was getting all flustered by that. And I'm like, dude, I didn't ask for the penguin, man. Why'd you give me that thing anyway? See, he keeps trying to trade with me because he wants his penguin back. It's some kind of rare penguin thing, but I couldn't figure out how to do that. I'm like, well, don't worry about it now. I'll give it back to you later, I guess. But then he was all whining about it, so I came over here and I'm like, all right, fine, I'll give it back to you. And then we tried to figure out that, not a trade, but like just give the item to him. So I clicked on him. At this point, I'm like, okay, I'll just try to give you the item. And we tried to do that a couple times. It seemed like it was successful, but for some reason, that penguin thing just kept following me. It wouldn't go to him. So he was getting frustrated by that. So I'm like, okay, this is the point where I try to give it to him. But see, it says some weird message. And I'm like, I can't give you the penguin, dude. So he's like, no, I don't want that. I want that penguin. So I try to see, you need a trading license to trade. I don't know what that means. If you know what that means, comment like how I'm supposed to give that to him, because he was kind of getting mad at this point. I'm like, I'm trying to give you this thing, but I can't. It won't let me give it back to you. So there's a button for give item. So we tried to do that from the backpack. Then I put the penguin in there, and it still wouldn't let me do it. See, you need a trading license to give that item away. So I couldn't figure out. They didn't understand that either. So I'm guessing, I don't know what a trading license is. And at this point, well, I'm like, okay, I don't have that item. Let's just go get a shower because I stink. And he's like, I want my penguin. I want my penguin. He keeps following me around. He's like, I want my penguin. I'm like, dude, I don't know how to give you back your dumb penguin. Why'd you give it to me in the first place? And then he's like, oh, he didn't. It was some accident or something now. But finally, I convinced him to let me get a shower at least, because I'm like, I just want to end this part in the shower at least so I can get cleaned up. And he's like, all right, fine, follow me. And so we go upstairs, and he's like, all right, fine, I'll give you that. He's still trying to get this penguin back, which we still couldn't figure out. And he was getting flustered by this. Finally, he gave up because we couldn't figure it out. And my other son's talking to me, and my daughter's talking to me, and we're all just like, all right, just forget about it for right now. I'm like, all right, I'll try one more time. Here's your penguin. Come get it. But I didn't see that message until, actually, I just didn't realize it until now that it had some kind of license for that. That's why I wouldn't let him get it. But he was like freaking out over this penguin. I guess it's still in my backpack. But I'll have to look to see how I can give it back to him, because what kind of license is that? I don't get it. Anyway, we're looking around. Finally, he's going to show me where the shower is. So I'm like, take me to the shower so I can unstinkify. And then he's like, all right, you got to get in there. And I'm like, no, you have to get in the middle of the water. And I'm like, oh, okay. So there I am sitting in it, getting cleaned up. I'm like, ooh, this is nice. I like this. Getting clean. And we're all sitting in the hot tub, hanging out. Boom. Finally, I'm clean. And I get 7 Robux for that. All right. I'm like, all right, I'm going to call that good for now. I think I'm kind of good for wandering around. And I go, well, let's save it here. We'll figure out.